community. He leads a user group. He's very active, always sharing useful information, particularly aimed at developers. And so now that we're on the final leg of the Business Central Bootcamp, the developer leg of the developer track of the Business Central Bootcamp, is a great opportunity to introduce Francis Msangi. So Francis Msangi, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Rias. Okay, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon from everywhere. And welcome to this session where we are going to look at publishing and subscribing to events in Business Central. So I have prepared a some small text about the events. Let's start with the events in L by describing them. So we have events, they can be used for different purposes, such as generating notifications when certain behavior occurs or the state of an entity changes, or distributing information and integrating with external systems and applications. So when I think about events, most of the time I like thinking about these common events that we had or we have on web pages like button click events, because they are not way off these Business Central events, because it's an action that happens and then you react to an action. So in Business Central, the events are used extensively for workflows and Dynamics 365 for sales integration. If you have used workflows, you clearly understand it heavily relies on events. It's really event driven and it's an amazing feature. So the types of events, we have several types of events. We have business events, which reflect a change in state, e.g. a workflow. Maybe you have changed a document from open to pending to approved. So that is a state that has changed. So the business event, they define a formal contract that carries an implicit promise not to change in the future releases. It is the expectation that business events are published by solution internet service vendors, including Microsoft. So example is public APIs, and it should not be tied to implementation details. Just have a visualization of something like a weather API that gives you information about the weather today in a certain city. So that's an example of a business event, because if you have subscribed to such an event and you are receiving information, you don't expect it to change as often. So the minimal changes is what is expected. And then we have integration events. They are not strict as business events. They are similar but not strict. They can be changed. So it enables integration to other solutions with Dynamics 365 Business Central without having to perform traditional code modifications. So integration events for us who used, if you use the CAL model, the previous CAL, you understand that at times you are doing modifications on the tables or on the base application directly. So with integration events, we no longer, with now the AL model, we should not be doing the manual code modifications. And that's where the integration events come in. So we should make use of integration events to extend our application. If we want to add code in a specific area of the application, we make use of integration events. And then global events, they are predefined system events raised by various base app code units, like on before login start, on after company, open, event, and the login management by the login management code unit. So these are automatically generated when, for instance, when you open your application, when you use the caption class code unit or the text management code unit. So these are global events that are automatically raised by the application. And then finally, we have the trigger events. These are predefined events which are automatically raised as well by the system. You don't need to create the event. So let me go back a little bit. So for business events and integration events, you need to define them in code. But for these other global and trigger events, the system is the one which raises them. Trigger events, we can They can be classified like database, the create, read, update, delete, and the validation of fields. So when you are creating a record, when you are reading or updating or deleting a record, you make use of, you generate trigger events automatically or pages. And then, so how do you go about the event-driven development? You first need to publish the event. Once you publish the event, you need to raise it, and then you subscribe to the event. And as clearly stated here, only with business and integration events, that's where you publish and raise the event. For the other global, the global events and the trigger events, they are automatically published and raised by the system, and then you subscribe to the event. So let's dive deep into publishing an event, which is like exposing an event to applications to provide hookup points for event subscribers or make it available for subscription. And so it's done manually for business and integration events. And then raising an event after an event has been published by an event publisher method, you can add logic to call event publishers method just like any other method. So subscribers of an event will not react to the event until it is raised in the application. So in as much as you have published an event, if you don't raise the event, it will not have any impact. You need to publish it and raise the event at the same time. And then in a subscriber, which is the final step of event building, it listens to the events raised. It listens to the events raised and executes the business logic to handle the event. There can be multiple subscribers to the same event from various locations in the application code. So when an event is raised, the subscriber method are run one at a time in no particular order. You can't specify the order in which the subscriber methods are called. This is another important step. When you are subscribing to an event, remember the system will randomly choose the subscriptions, because you can subscribe to more, you can subscribe to an event more than once in different parts of the application. So there are a couple of things that can make defining an event subscriber method easier. We have some snippets like T event sub, and then typing keyboard shortcuts, control space displays intelligence to help you fill the attribute arguments and discover which events are available, or Shift Alt E will enable you to be able to see the events and insert the code automatically instead of typing it manually. So we look at an example of first publishing an event. So publishing an event, as we have stated, we need to do it directly in code. So I've created some few, like 2 tables, and I've called it a bot. Like I'm taking an assumption of a scenario where the user or the user needs their bots booked periodically. So they want their bot to be booked by customers, and they can verify if the bot is available or not, because if they want to take a ride, maybe to go and see the sunset at the beach, or they would like to know the availability, okay, they want to tour a specific area, then they need to book the bot. So we'll try and publish the event using that. So this is a page that will enable us do exactly that. Let me go to the bot. Let me go to the table first. So I've defined just a few tables for this purpose today, just 2 tables. We have a bot table. Let me go there. This is the table that we'll use. The bot table has a few fields here with the boat number, name, status, and then the number of passengers will be in the boat, and then the picture of the boat, and then the vendor of the boat, the person who is in charge of the boat. And then we have now this place where the customers can book the boat. So they'll have a booking number, and then they'll be able to define which customer is booking the boat, which boat, and then the travel date, time, and then the destination, and then the number of passengers, and then the number series for that. Okay, in the page that we have for the boat, let me go to the creation of the boat. One key field here is having, just a minute, when we are booking the boat, this is the boat card. So in this card page, you need to, the admin or the user needs to probably, after the creation of the bot, they need to state it to active, to activate the bot to make sure that this is available for booking. Ideally, most of the time, maybe it's not available for booking. They need to, maybe there is a problem with it, so they need to deactivate it or activate it. And so this is the functionality that we have created. So you need to activate a bot. So on activation, you need to confirm, do you want to activate the bot or not? If you confirm, then you can be able to activate it or deactivate it. So in this code here, let me just minimize this for us to be able to view. Okay, so this is an action in the card page of the bot. So we are trying to activate. So how can we be able to use events in such a scenario? We can create an event with a convention of, we can publish an event before the confirm or before activating and after activating. Events can be used in scenarios like before posting, after posting. So in our case, we want to create an event before we activate this bot and after activating. So any code that we need to look at, including validation, will be raised here. So the first thing, we need to create an event publisher, and we are using an integration event. So the snippet is t-event int for integration event. So include sender false. We don't want to include the instance of this page to the sender, the instance of this object to the sender, and then global access of we don't want the global variables to be false. So when you use t-event int, this is the snippet that it generates. And you can see the integration event has two variables that I've just mentioned. They include sender and the global access. And then there's an optional variable for isolated, which means that to specify if the event can be run separately in an isolated manner, that is in a separate transaction. So this is our local event, and here we need to have a convention, a naming convention for events on before activate bot. Like we need to use a convention that gives the user or the person who will be subscribing an easier way to clearly see that, clearly subscribe. So I'll take the record of a bot that will be an input. Come on. And then we'll just use the short format. So it is taking a bot as an input. And this is now the integration event on before activate bot. And then we'll have another one. Allow me to just copy it first. For now on after, still taking the same input. And this is where we have now created the event, but we now need to raise it. We will raise it right before the user confirms. So we just need to say on before activate, and then we take the record, the current record of that bot, and then we have on after activate, and then we still use the same current record. So this is like saying, so the subscriber will add code here and here. Like the subscriber, ideally they add code from at this place, but you give it to them where they'll be able to add the code. And now we need to go to our code unit to subscribe to these two events. So let me open a code unit that I've created. So it is event subscriber. Here's the code unit. So we have two options of subscribing. We can use the shortcut and generate the events that we have just created. But let me start with t-event sub. So ours is a page, and the page is of type You're saying it's a card page of bot card, and there's no element. The element is only relevant for trigger events because trigger events are the ones which affect fields. So skip on missing license, we'll say it's false, and then skip on permission is false. There's something that I'm missing here. Let me just regenerate the event sub. Oh, on some event. Okay. So what is the event that we need to subscribe? As we had stated, we need to have the IntelliSense, the control space that will give us the IntelliSense. I've just pasted on control space, and you have, so the object type is page, and it's a bot card. So on, we need to have on before activate bot. So here is our event that we have just created. So before you activate your bot, then the convention here for subscribing is, just a minute, is you need to specify this method, like, let me say validate fields, the action that you'll be doing on this before activate, validate fields on before activate bot, and then you'll be able to take a record of type bot. Let's see. It's a record of type bot. This is a manual method. We'll go to a better method of subscribing to an event. So I believe it should be okay. Okay, there are some problems here, but never mind. So, okay, what is the other method of doing this event subscription that will make it easier to avoid all these errors here and there, which I normally use? So there is a snippet, or when you press on Control-Shift-E, you will be able to see some event. Just a minute. Control-Shift-E. Let me just confirm the shortcut here. Because it's easier to subscribe to events when you can be able to, oh, it's Shift-Alt-E, sorry. So Shift-Alt-E automatically, and then it will be able to show us the events that are available. So let me just use the on before activate bot. And you can see it has populated everything that we need, including specifying this event as on before activate bot. So when you're doing event-driven development, Shift-Alt-E is your best solution, because typing it manually is not the best, because you'll take a lot of time to subscribe to events. So it has done exactly the same. I don't know, my bot card could be having an error. Okay. Okay. So we can now be able to subscribe to this bot and generate and do, like, we want here to say, let me say validate fields on before activate bot. So we want to make sure that this bot has a vendor. Test field, the vendor, bot vendor. We also want to make sure that this bot has a name, and the bot should also be having something. Yeah, let me just say bot vendor, bot name, and then at least number of passengers, probably, because we need to know the number of passengers that needs to be in that particular bot. So we are done with our subscription. Before we test, let's go to now on after activate bot. We just need to throw out a message and tell the user that to confirm that they have successfully done the activation. So our Shift-Alt-E again, and then on after activate bot. So on after activate bot, what do we need to do? Let me say send a notification on after activate bot. So we just say successfully activated. Then we'll be able now to test. I'll build the application and run it so that we can see the two different steps. First, we'll try and activate a bot that is not probably having all the fields so that we can see if our validation has worked in terms of subscribing. These are some of the bots that I had created. I'll create without an image. So I've just created a bot and I'll try to activate the bot. Oh my, okay, it has successfully activated. Sure to activate bot. Okay, let's see. Something is wrong with our code here. Let's go back here. There's something wrong. So on before activate, what has happened? Just a minute. Okay, we just need to make sure that everything is running all right. Okay, one thing is we have had successfully activated on after activate this bot. Let me just go here. Okay, so I have called on after activate bot instead of on before activate bot from this confirmation. That's why the first, okay, it has worked, but it has not worked correctly because we called on after activate instead of on before activate. So ideally, we should have called on before activate and then on after activate. Somebody should have pointed it out to me. Okay, but no problem. That's why we have been able to erroneously activate it. So I'll run it again, build it and run it. Let me run the application. And then we create another bot. I don't know what we'll call it, and try to activate it. So it's running with debugging. There's a possibility that the code has stopped here. So we have tested the field. In our code unit here for subscribing to the event, we have okay, the code has stopped here because the bot vendor is missing. So the validation has already been done and it has been done on the code unit, which is now subscribing to the event that we created. Let me continue working on it. And again, I think we'll be having another error here. Let me continue. Okay, so the bot vendor must have a value in this bot number. So if you like your application to give maybe developers a place where they can generate or subscribe to the events from they can be able to add logic specific to what they want to add, you can use such a feature. So I have exhausted the names of bots that I've used, sailing bot and all that. But let's edit this one. We'll call it, there's a local bot in our place that is known as that. We call it MPEX. So don't worry about the name, but it's a local bot that we use as peer to row it. So if we get this confirmation, it means that everything has been keyed in. If you're sure to activate the bot, and then this message of successfully activation was a subscription that we generated and got it after activating our bot. So you can be able to add code in the application in areas that you want. As you can see, there is a place that you need to clearly subscribe to the event for you to be able to see and generate and subscribe to the event. So the final thing that I'd like to do is recording events recorder. There's a feature of, for instance, you're using an application and you don't know what events are being raised as the application runs. You want to post maybe a sales order, and you're not sure of the events that will be generated as you post your sales order. So I'll create a new sales order. It will automatically generate probably the customer, and I'll sell an item. Oh, what's wrong with my work date? So I'll sell a bicycle from this sales order. The number could be probably 5 or 10. And then 10 bicycles. And so that is the unit price, and this is the total price. So I want to know all the events. The document has not been released. Okay, sure to exit. Yes. Before we post this sales order, we want to know how many events will be generated before while the user is posting this sales order. Because you're like, there could be so many events that are generated, and you're not in a position to know which event is generated for subscription or which event is available for subscription. So the events recorder, let me search the events recorder, will enable you to see all the events that are available for subscription. So when I start this event recorder on this page, I like duplicating it so that I can generate another instance. So, and then we go to our sales orders and post this sell order. So the recorder will be recording all the events that are being generated by this action of posting the sales order. So let me post. I'll ship and invoice the sales order as it's posting. Let's wait and see. I hope we have no error. Okay, so the recorder should be doing its work here on this other side so that you can be able, okay, probably there's an error because it's taking too long, but ideally the recorder even gives you the snippet for subscribing to the event. So the event that has been raised, you can be able to subscribe to it from that particular recorder. Okay, this one is taking too long. Is it because it's a Docker instance? But we hope it will finish. Never mind, if this has an issue, we'll use the same our bot and then be able to row it off the sea and get the events that have been raised. Let me cancel it. Okay, it's taking too long. Probably it's because of the recorder, because, oh, there was an error here. No problem. There's an error that I hadn't seen. Because we are running with the debugger, that's why we are getting the errors on the debugger. So, but ideally the recorder produces even the events that are also database events, trigger events, global events, all the events that are available for subscription, but it's a great feature. Okay, let me close it. Wants to waste our time. Okay, you may be wondering why I'm using an instance of the same browser that was with the recorder, because at times the recorder does not recognize a new instance that you create. Let me just open. It might not recognize. So if you don't use the same instance, it might not record, and you might wonder what the problem could be. We'll give it time. I'll raise it again, and then we record sales order. Okay. The system is wondering, or the system is taking us too long. Let me give it a go again. publish the extension again, and then we run it afresh. And reduce this number of browser instances, and then refresh. Okay, let's start with the event recorder. So when you come to record events, you start again. Start recording, yes, and then let me duplicate this. So here in our new page, I'll be able to create a sales order. So I'll still use the one that we had used. What was missing? Let me just see. I can release it. There was no external document number, requested delivery date. Hope there is no error. Okay, there isn't. The loading is taking quite some time. Working on it. Let's be a bit patient because I like the events recorder feature. Okay, as it loads, another feature we have with events is you can bind an event to a subscription. You bind an event to only be subscribed by a specific code unit. And the one that I was explaining about isolated events, when you have isolated events, you are ideally having them running as single instances. Okay, different transactions, not single instance, sorry, different transactions, meaning like for each event subscription that has been subscribed, that is a transaction by itself. So if there's a commit in that transaction, it will be treated as a separate transaction. Okay, you don't need to do a sales order. You can do something else. Maybe the Docker engine is having, I don't know. I'm running this machine, this Business Central on Docker. There's probably something with the sales order that is too big for it. So each transaction is isolated as a separate a separate commit call. So you have, if you have maybe 3 or 4 separate events, okay, subscriptions, they will be isolated from each other. And if there's an error in one of them, it won't affect all the other subscriptions that are happening to the events. Yeah, so if you like, if you may want your application that the code that you are running, it should not be affected by any event that is subscribing, you can use the isolated events. We'll still use our bot because it seems to be the best one for this purpose. The reason I'm duplicating is because I tested this feature severally, and the only one that was recording well is one that I duplicated the same page. And I don't know for some reason why. If I open another page, it might not work, but let me just try. This Docker instance. Log in again. So let's probably, we have a new bot here that is not activated. Let's activate it. This is a sale bot. There's something missing, the bot vendor. So we just need to add this and then probably activate it. So we have activated it, and we'll move, and we hadn't started it. Huh? Let me stop our events. Let me see how many have been recorded. A few should have been recorded there. Okay. I think my system is just laughing at me. I don't know why. Let me see if there's any other question. Oh, Shift Alt E to call. Yeah. Stay on the sales header table. If you can list down, what about code coverage? Let me see. Okay. The events recorder page, it seems I'm not the only one who is having a problem with it. To use it, I don't know. Who has a better solution of using the events recorder page? I don't know. At times it doesn't work. Doesn't work when you're using the events recorder page. Yeah. But ideally, it will just give you a list of the events. And then here, when you have the get AL snippet, this AL snippet will give you the code that you'll be used to subscribe to that particular event that you have recorded in the events recorder. Yeah. Okay, that's it for my short session. And I believe I can go to the Q&As as we wait for our recorder to record. It's taking longer than we expect, but I believe the concept is home. Yeah. Raz, are you there? Okay. Okay, the business event type, the business event type, you can use it for I've not used okay, applications where you have like a contract where you don't changes will not be made to that particular event, or the changes that should be done to the event will take a long time. Like you're making a commitment that you will not be making changes to that particular event. So that is where we apply the business events. So yeah, that's where they are applied. Let me say, okay, that's why I was using the example of a weather API. The weather API, you don't need to be changing it as often because you have so many people who are subscribing to such an event. So any change to the structure of that event will lead to a lot of breaking changes in a business event scenario. So yeah, you should not be making any changes to it, like so many changes. Let me go to her. What about code coverage? Lokendra, please elaborate your question. I don't get it well. And then, okay. Um, There we are. Stay on the sales header table with this. And then what about code coverage? That is what I didn't get well. And then if multiple subscriptions take place from a single event, how, no, the system does not follow a sequence because the subscriptions to an event are random. Any subscription to a particular event is random. It's not following a certain sequence in the system. So Business Central does not follow a specific sequence or a specific pattern while subscribing to events. So it is, okay, the multiple events can be raised. So when they are being subscribed to, it will be random. So there's no way of specifying a sequence. Maybe an upgrade will have a way of specifying, but as of now, you cannot be able to specify a sequence. However, you can bind an event to restrict it to a specific subscriber. If you only want a certain subscriber to subscribe to the event, a certain code unit to subscribe to the event, you can bind it. Yes, and Okay, I think we still have some time. I'll probably be able to look at one trigger event. We subscribe to one trigger event, and so we need to subscribe to a trigger event, probably on insert or on validate. There is one example that Microsoft likes using on the trigger events. So on the trigger events, probably on insert, once let me say you have inserted something and you want maybe to modify it, or you want to see what has been inserted in that particular event. Let me just go to T event subscriber. So we can use in a table, we always use a database, and then so let's say on insert of a customer. So customer, you probably have now these several events here. So you have on after delete event. This is on after delete or on before. On after insert event. This is when you have just inserted a customer. On after on insert. This naming convention. On after rename event. They like using on validate address, but you can use ours. Let's say on after modify event, and then the element name, probably the phone number. We should be able to specify a phone number, or we can even use the record without specifying a specific element. Keep on missing license, false. Keep on missing permission, false. And so on after modify customer. Okay. Oh, just a minute, sorry. Let me share the screen. So what can we be able to do to a customer on after modify events? Maybe confirm postings on after modify, or confirm details. No, on after modify, you need to maybe notify on after modify event, and then we'll be able to get a customer. So here we have the available variables for the parameters. We have a var and an, let me say, a rec and an xrec. So you can be able to get the rec of the customer and an xrec for this particular customer. So depending on what you want, do you want the current record or the previous record? What functionality do you want to use it on after modify of a particular customer? So let's see this, you can message it out. This has been modified successfully. And that's it. We can even add another, maybe global events, shift control E. Shift, I usually forget that shortcut. It is Alt Shift E for the events. So login management, the login management code unit, let's say on after login start or on after login end, on before login start code unit. This is another snippet that we can use to generate something on before login start of the global login management code unit remaining few minutes. So there's one question here about code coverage. Let me see. Okay, we can use the code coverage to see the code getting affected for a particular process. Okay, so Lokendra, I believe you mean the debugger. If we want to be able to see the variables that are being affected while we are displaying the events one step by step, I believe that is what you could be meaning. Yes, we can be able to do that. Once you set a breakpoint in your application, like, okay, is meaning that you search for code coverage. Okay, but once you set a breakpoint, just a minute. Oh, this is what you mean. Oh, the live event recorder. Okay. The object type filter. Object ID filter. Okay, thank you for that note. So please just send a chat. So what do we use it for? The code coverage. Let me just share again my screen. So the feature you're saying it's used for what? Lokendra, please. I'm seeing your chat here. Okay, it's a live event recorder. So is it the same as the other one that we have been using? Because this event recorder is different, as I can see. Because in this code coverage, let me just open. Object type filter. Okay, I've not explored it, but I believe we can now be able to explore the code coverage. So you filter the type and then you start recording, and then it shows you the code that has been covered. So when you spoke about, okay, that's okay, and thank you for that note, Lokendra. And then we have these workflow events. This is another feature event that we use, like this is when an approval of a vendor has been requested, and then this is the condition, and then you have a response for whatever response that you need to do. Send an approval request, generate a notification on send vendor request when a vendor record has been changed. So for instance, when a record has been changed, let's say the number has been changed, you can show a message that it has been changed. I believe workflows usually give us an example of a great use of events in Business Central. So with the use of workflows, it shows us how we can be able to subscribe and even create a lot in terms of Business Central. So you can create it from a profile, you can create it from scratch. Let's say, for instance, an approval has been of a vendor has been requested. Okay, a vendor record is changed. An incoming document is created, an item record is changed, an approval of a customer is requested. So these are events that can be generated and subscribed to. So in a nutshell, this is a way of creating and subscribing to events. Do you have any other comment or question? Anyone with a comment about events that maybe I haven't mentioned, we can add to this. Anyone with any other comment? There is none so far. Okay, let me ask a question then. Who has used the single instance code unit? the single instance where you generate an event and you generate an event and you just use it to like for the single instance when okay, this is a subscriber. The subscriber code unit that is a single instance. Who has used that? Where once you are subscribing to an event, it generates an instance of the code unit and it is used until the application has the processing of the application of that particular session has ended. Probably we can have a go at that. Who has used that? If there is no one, maybe we can see. And how is that feature working out? No one on the chat has used that? Okay, let me see. And okay, and then we have these business events. Okay, who knows a business event in Microsoft for the Business Central? Because I tried to look for a business event that is on the base application. Who knows a business event that is on the base application that we can be able to probably explore so that we can now help each other and see a business event? Anyone who knows a business event? Okay, it seems to be no one. No one has seen a business event in Business Central, including, I haven't seen one. Let me see if there's anyone. Okay, silence means probably true or false. Okay, is there any other question that I have not handled or any other comment?
Thank you there, Francis. So it looks like you've answered all the questions there. And I think you've done a great educational session there, explaining how to effectively use the business events for reoccurring business processes. I don't think there's any more questions there, Francis. So I'd like to ask you if there's any final comments or announcements you'd like to make to the community, especially those who are at the beginning of their journey in their road to development of Business Central.
Oh yeah. The ones who are beginning the journey to Business Central, and so for those who have probably from a different development language, they should focus on yes, they should empty their cup in a way because this is an extension model. It's different from the ones that they have been doing, the ones that they have been coding probably in Java or PHP or C++ or C Sharp, and then in on that other side they were developing everything from scratch. But here on Business Central, it's about the extension model. An extension model is where you first need to understand or learn the application. You need to learn the base application, how it works first before you can be able to extend it. So a lot of time will be spent on learning the base application and then extending it afterwards, after you have been able to understand what you're extending so that you cannot reuse something that is already there in the default application. Yes, I believe that's it for maybe the beginners.